Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Systeme.io podcast with me, Natasha Pinto. Join us as we discuss all things digital marketing and entrepreneurship. Here, online business owners take us on a journey, how they went from zero to launch. Today, our guest is Yaro Starak. He is the co-founder of inboxdone.com, a coach at blogmastermind.com, blogger and podcast host. But blogging is what you're best known for, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so for our audience, I think it would be really interesting for them to see a little bit of your history, how you got to where you are today, because there's this trend I've noticed interviewing quite a few entrepreneurs that they didn't get into it on purpose. Quite often it's a happy accident. So how did you get here?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Natasha. I love the way you say entrepreneur. You're reminding me of one of my first business partners was Gideon Shalwick, and he was from South Africa, and he has the accent. And, how did I get into it? Yeah, so it wasn't like, yes, it was somewhat a stumbling into something, but it was also a very deliberate decision to never, well, ideally avoid having a full-time job. That was the goal at like 18 years old. So I never wanted to have a boss. I never wanted to have an alarm clock. I had to get up at 6:30 when going to high school every day, and I hated that with that alarm clock. I didn't want to cap on my income potential. Like I hated this idea of earning an hourly wage. It just seemed like like you're trading your time for a fixed amount of money in return. That sounded horrible. So all those things were kind of the bad side of doing a traditional career and getting a job. So I knew I had to find another way to at least make enough money to survive. That was step one. So, I mean, this is where I guess the luck comes into it. I was 18 when the internet was going through its dot-com boom in the late 90s. So I was becoming an adult. The internet was becoming an adult at the same time. I was starting to see it being used for businesses. So that was naturally where I gravitated to. And that's also because I got my first internet account when I enrolled in university in Brisbane, Australia. So because of that, I started playing with websites, which led to my first website, which then led to my kind of first real online business. And then fast forward sort of 7 years later, all that eventually led to blogging and podcasting. And I very much started blogging and podcasting because of all the experiences I'd had with those previous two main businesses and all the stories I could share from those as a form of content. So that's kind of how it all got started. But definitely a mix of chance and deliberate decision making.
That's a pretty insightful decision to make as an 18-year-old, especially then. I think now things are a little bit different. Kids are exposed to success stories like yours, and it's easier for them. It must have been really difficult to be a pioneer.
It was a little lonely, I think is definitely the accurate way to describe it. And for the reasons you said, there just weren't a lot of examples and role models. I did follow a few traditional entrepreneurs, I guess, like a Richard Branson. And then thankfully around that time too, suddenly you've got Amazon and Jeff Bezos, and then you've got, eBay, and I think it was Pierre Omidyar who founded that. And I read the books about those two companies. And then I read books actually, in sort of 2000, 2001, it was starting to become more common to be an entrepreneur online, and especially not just big stories, but little stories. So I loved, like, this is one book I bought in Australia. It was like 50 entrepreneurs who had built some kind of business online. And it was everything from, a little e-commerce store selling something you made yourself, all the way up to realestate.com.au, which was the largest real estate platform in Australia, and I think still is. And just hearing how the founder came up with the idea, how they found a tech solution to build their business, their website, how they got customers. So all of that was just going into my brain constantly. So even though around me, like my friends were not really into this, obviously your parents are like, not really understanding at all what you're doing. Yeah, I had that kind of book influence. And then the internet obviously started to become more of a source too. Definitely not like it is today, though. It's almost the opposite now, because everyone seems to be wanting to be like a YouTube influencer or something like that. And Instagrammers talking about how much money they make, or TikTokers doing that, and everyone's talking about money, money, money. Suddenly you feel left out because you're not the one doing that now. Like you're missing out on life if you're not running some kind of online business. So it certainly has done a complete flip.
Definitely. Now, another trend that we sort of notice, especially amongst entrepreneurs who are just starting out, is that they suffer from some obstacles and some failures, I guess, in a way. How do you manage those, especially when you're new? How do you keep yourself going?
Well, I wish I could say I was good at it when I was younger, but I really didn't. I was an emotional roller coaster kind of person, I think, and for the first maybe 8 years, from about 18 to 25. It's funny, when you hit 25, I don't know how old you are, so I'm going to
28,
assume.
so yeah.
Okay, you're over 25. Okay. I don't know if it's because your frontal lobe is fully developed at that point, or maybe you've had a sense of growing up experiences, in career or maybe studying or both. And things start to finally feel like, okay, it's not how I want it to be yet, but I now realize that I'm committing to this path, and I sort of stuck to it. Before that, I had these two businesses. I had a card game website, and then I had an essay editing company. But while I was sort of stumbling along with those two at different times, I was also like seeing a friend start a different business, and he would make a little bit more money than I did. And then of course I wanted to do that as well. So I would wake up and almost throw out everything I had and start that, or just feel bad that my business didn't make as much money as his, or, everything you compare yourself to others. And I was doing that constantly. And of course it gets worse and worse, as we just talked about with the internet today. You can compare yourself nonstop. Back then it wasn't as easy, but I certainly still was subscribing to like email newsletters, and people would send me a new method for making money or a new business opportunity. And I would be tempted to jump ship. And I had a lot of like sleepless nights where you're kind of lying in bed going, is this business ever going to make enough money for me to survive? So I had to work a lot on mindset. And I think that became a really big, strong pillar, because at the worst of that insecurity, I was having like panic attacks and anxiety when I was like 21. So I had to sort of fix that. And that turned out to be a blessing in terms of solidifying a strong mindset for all of life, but certainly helped with business going forward too, because once you kind of work on your self-talk, reframe your interpretation of the world, start to get more positive rather than negative, and believe in a destination you're heading towards and enjoy the journey, all those sorts of things. And then you study a bit of science around it too, and how it actually, from a scientific point of view, makes sense to also focus on positivity if you actually do want the result you're going after eventually. So that really helped. And by the time I kind of turned 25, I was just getting into the blogging space, but my essay company was paying a full-time salary. And I felt like I had absorbed enough information and done enough experimenting. That's important too. You have to fail, but then try again and start to see what works and what doesn't work. And when you've never had something work, failure feels really bad. When you've had things work before, failure just feels like a stepping stone towards something that's worked, but that will work. But that's hard, to get to that point. You have to live through one success story before you feel that sense of confidence. So it is a challenge.
Definitely. And then I think blogging has definitely changed from what it was when you started to what it is now. So what would your definition of a blogger be in 2021?
Oh boy. Yeah, you're right. I mean, blogging sounds kind of boring and old now when we talk about it, right? It's like, who would do that? I'm going to be on TikTok or Snapchat or something like that instead, which is a fair point. I think it really comes down to the medium of communication that you are most comfortable with. And I was not expecting to be a writer, but when I started writing to my blog, it just became something I really enjoyed. And then the more you do it, the better you get at it, and the more you want to do it. And then, of course, you start making money from it, as my blog did become an actual business. That's very reinforcing, and you want to do more and more of it. And I did podcasts from the day one, and I liked audio, but I never went all in on it the way I did with the writing side. And then YouTube came, and then Facebook came, and then everything else has come since then. And when those tools showed up, I was certainly there, but I was like, I'm going to stick to this writing that I like doing, rather than sort of now try and start a YouTube channel and really focus on video. And that was a personal preference. Both are good choices. I think the most important thing is you focus on whatever medium that you like and feel you want to get better at. If it's YouTube, if it's Snapchat, if it's Instagram, if it's podcasting, if it's writing, and then blogging is a great choice, then do that. All of those are pathways for connecting with an audience, building trust. The one thing I would say, though, to anyone who is thinking about a content business, we can call blogging obviously a content business, but YouTube and all those are content businesses too, is make sure you add an email list to no matter what platform you're using. It's the most important thing, certainly for my business and pretty much anyone I've ever coached, and all the most successful people who are like education, information type marketers. The email list is the backbone for how they've made significant wealth and how they've generated consistent income. Because for the reason that we all kind of eventually realized, just having a platform to reach people, like if you do build a great YouTube channel or a great blog or a great Instagram, those are all external platforms. And even blogging, although you own your blog, you are kind of relying on Google as an external platform sending you an audience. So even that's a little bit iffy as well. You can go up and down. If you have the people who discover you on YouTube or Instagram or whatever, and then you're always saying, hey, go join my email list and I'll give you this free report or this free video or this free something, and they subscribe, that's an asset, your newsletter, that you can never really lose. As long as you maintain that connection, you control your access to audience. And that for me was back in 2007, I added a newsletter to my blog, and that doubled my business. Not instantly, of course, I had to build up the subscriber base, but shortly after that, I released a course. And even before that, when I was promoting anything, it was the 1-2 punch of writing a blog post and then sending an email about whatever it was I promoted, whether it was an affiliate product or my own product. So email is still, as old school as email actually is still a really important part of the equation.
Yeah, that email list is the one thing you 100% own. So
exactly, yeah. And you control how it works, when you send. It's definitely the best.
Yeah. And then, so we've spoken that blogging can take place on all these different platforms. Is it still a lucrative career, do you think? Someone starting now, is a content-based business still lucrative? Especially with only around like 30% of bloggers reporting success at the moment.
Well, 30%, that'd be amazing. When I was doing, people were saying 5% were succeeding, you know. And I would actually argue it's probably less than 30% in reality. If it's 30%, I would say everyone should do it, because that's pretty good odds. It is. It's one of those things where the truth of the matter is, no matter what type of content business you go after, it is very difficult because you have to keep consistently producing content. And during the early days, no one will really know you exist. It's that doing it when no one cares time that is really hard. But, and I know you're, I think, a content producer too, Natasha, you know, if you keep doing something, then you start to see a little trickle of results, whether it's, you know, your first few visits from some place you didn't expect it. It could be Google, it could be someone discovering you on maybe like a podcast or on social media. And then, you get your first email subscriber, and then you get more email subscribers. So you kind of get that positive reinforcement that keeps you going. So that's what you look for. And I don't think that's ever changed. No matter what business model you choose, that's the same. The main difference really now is just the sheer size of the market and the sheer diversity of platforms you can use to reach the market. So blogging, when I started, was like pretty much the first form of social media. It was this place where you could write content. People could actually leave a comment. No one does it anymore, but you could leave comments to blog posts. And that's where you had this interaction with the author of this content, which was unheard of beforehand. There was only ever really static websites. Of course, today, a lot of discussion really happens in whatever, a Reddit group or a Discord or a Telegram or Slack or an Instagram comments, or even just snapping back and forth between people on Snapchat, whatever it is. That's how, you know, the interaction, the social part of it happens. So you just have to go whichever tool you want. As I said before, you know, be native to the tool, interact with others, and build the email list, and then of course, you know, build the business behind that. And I don't think, like, blogging hasn't really changed. It's still about writing words, and the challenge is you have to basically produce content consistently, and then you still have to market yourself. You still have to bring incoming links to grow your authority, to make sure your content does start ranking. And that's the hard part, because a lot of people would rather sit at home and just write content and hope people show up. But the truth is, you have to go out there and maybe show up on a podcast and talk about what you're doing. Maybe get a post written in someone else's website, like some kind of news feature or a guest post or something like that. All kinds of ways to obviously market yourself, but you do need the marketing component as well as the content creation component. And that's often why people like social media, because the audience built in there. But even saying that, you can't just start an Instagram and instantly, you know, after posting 10 or 20 images, expect to have an audience. You still have to go out there and use hashtags, connect with other Instagrammers, potentially do like, what do they call them when you both post on each other's channel? I can't remember what they're called anymore, but like those swaps and just to grow your audience. So yeah, you can't live in a vacuum.
Okay, I was going to ask you about that now. So how you kind of marry a marketing strategy to your blogging, and where do you think the industry is at with that? Do you think there's going to be another shift? Because there has been one recently where lots of these platforms are showing preference towards video content, especially short format content. So is that something that bloggers, even if you are a writer, should get into?
I have mixed feelings about that one, honestly, Natasha. I don't think someone who absolutely hates the idea of doing video should force themselves to do video, honestly, because it's just like you go where your joy is, your strengths are, and turn them into super talents rather than, try and force yourself to do video and just realize you hate it and then you get no results. So, but if you're open to it and it's not something you don't like, then for sure you're quite right. I mean, the challenge here is what does the social media platforms want to highlight next? At one point it was Facebook groups. Next point it's video. Then it's short form video. Then it's stories. It constantly changes. So you can keep riding the wave. Like I know TikTok right now, you can go on there and just become like not even have to do that much marketing. You can go on there and just be consistent with your content, and the algorithm will start to show you to all these people, and they've got 1 billion people on the platform now, which is incredibly huge audience. I think the plus side, of course, is because the world is so large online, you can find a little slice, and that's why marketing, even if you're not getting 1 million views to your TikToks, as long as you're getting 5, 10, 20 new subscribers to your email list collectively across all marketing channels, you can feel that sense of moving forward and growing a business. So but I would definitely advocate, if you do like video, I would go where the biggest wave is. And right now, I think it's safe to say TikTok is the biggest wave in short form, and maybe stories on Instagram. I was actually literally just yesterday, someone was posting that they just released the same content on Instagram. I think it was a YouTube video, an Instagram story, and a TikTok, and they were putting the numbers they got in 24 hours. YouTube was the least, TikTok was the next least, and the Instagram story, was the most. Albeit that person had more followers at that time on Instagram, so it did make sense. But it just showed even how much more Instagram is pushing that sort of short form, instant messaging style video more. And there's a strategy and a science behind that too. You can learn how to do better there. You can become a better editor, and then you can hopefully tap into the larger audiences. And I'll just say it again though, make sure you bring some of those people back to your email list. Otherwise it's temporary. And then, it's nice to see a big follower count, but you got to have the email subscribers.
Yeah, because that's the difference between reach and people who have kind of opted into your list and said, yes, I'm interested, I want to see more consistently.
Yeah, bingo, exactly. Step 1 of the funnel, right? So
yeah. Now, are there any other steps that you would advise taking when someone is creating a blog to make it more successful, to kind of put themselves in the best position to do well?
For me, and this is what I've always taught, is be a storyteller and be quite transparent about those stories, especially if they're about your life or your client's life, case studies, people you've interacted with. From day one of my blogging, and I still do this today if I write posts or newsletters, I'll always write in a conversational tone. And it's just what was in my head and how I would say things. So I just wrote it that way. Obviously, you get better with writing over time. You get more concise because, what goes on in your head is often not as concise as what an article should be. So you kind of bring it back. That's been really helpful. And the storytelling aspect is huge because human brains much more interested and are more compelled to pay attention to storytelling. And I'm not just saying that because it's worked. It's actually, there's some science backing that up. There's certain parts of your brain that fire up when they're engaging with the story versus, say, just laying out the facts of how to do something. So I used to have this formula. I guess I still have this formula. I just don't talk about it as much anymore, but I taught this quite a lot, where I would always start an article, a blog post or a newsletter with some kind of short story relating to, whatever I'm trying to teach or trying to interact about. So it would be a story. Maybe it might be long. It might be 10 paragraphs, something like that. And then there'll be some kind of point to the story that's the teaching lesson. So I might say this, I share the story. Often it's like something I was trying to change or do in my business or my life. Then I'd say this is what was not working. I'd tell the stories about that. Then I'd say I finally had a breakthrough. I'd call it like an aha moment, and things got better, and that's the result I got. And then I would say, here's how to do the steps to implement my aha moment. So it was a combination of practical how-to and story to begin and engage. And I found that formula worked really well because you would capture the attention and engage the brain and then build rapport. They start to like and know and trust you, feel like you're becoming a friend, especially if they read lots of stories, lots of posts over time. They really do start to feel like they know you. And of course, with the how-to part, you're giving them a practical outcome, a benefit that they walk away with value, basically, and you're demonstrating your expertise and your ability to actually achieve something and pass it on as knowledge. So as an education business, that's critical. So you're kind of like demonstrating everything in your free content to then hopefully get people to buy your course or buy your ebook or sign up for your membership site. So that was the formula I used, and I still use whenever I do long form content. I still would use it on video. Like I'm saying that for written content. If you're producing any kind of, obviously not short form content, it's kind of hard to do it, but in longer form video, 5 minutes or more, you can tell a story and you can lay out how-to steps, and that's a great video as well.
Okay, well, my background originally is in teaching, and I definitely agree. Children are more interested in the story you're telling them, and then if you kind of slide the learning in at the end, they tend to not only just think, okay, cool, these are the 4 facts that I need to remember for the day, but also, oh, I remember the story that ma'am told me. I'll remember the steps that come along with it.
Nice. What grade are we talking about here?
I taught everything from grade 4 to grade 12. So 9-year-olds to 18-year-olds.
Oh, wow. Okay. And it works on all of them?
Works on all of them. They love to hear stories. Anything that doesn't feel like school.
All right. We're all the same then.
Yeah. All right. And then how big a role does your niche play in the success of your blog? So are there some niches that are more successful than others? Are there some where, I don't know, maybe blogging is not right for the niche? What do you think?
It depends on your goals. Obviously, if we're in it for the money, then yeah, your niche really matters. If you're in it just for the joy of expression, you can write about whatever you want. When it comes to money, though, obviously, you do need to go where there are people spending money, and that is something that you should decide early on. I had a little bit of leeway for 2 reasons. I was early enough that I could be very general with my content and I'd still get audience. You're not going to get that benefit today. It's too crowded. You have to be specific and focus on a niche. I also had leeway in the sense that I had an active business and I didn't need my blog to make money from day 1 or day 3 months, day 6 months, whatever it is. So I could experiment without feeling this pressure. And I say this to so many people because if you come into blogging going, I need to make a full-time income within 12 months, too much pressure, not realistic, and you're not going to stick to it long enough to actually get to the point where you make a full-time income. So yes, bearing all that, if you heed that advice and you've got the runway that you can explore a topic, you can experiment a little bit with your niche. But I would still be always thinking, who is the target audience? What are they trying to solve? What are their pain points? And when you're describing that, it's physical pain, it's emotional pain, it's the practical elements. Are they not able to do something in their life? Take something simple. You have a bad back, or you think that's your audience. They have a bad back. You could refine it down to a mom or a dad with a small family, and the back is stopping them from doing things they enjoy, like playing with their kids, playing tennis, with friends, even traveling because they can't sit in an airplane for a long time. So all these things that are in their life that are stopped because of the bad back. Then you tie it into the emotions, feeling like you're missing out on experiences with your kids that you can never get back again. You don't get to travel, so you don't get to experience the world. There's emotional attachments to those as well. Then you really understand the niche. You really understand the pain point, the emotional, the physical. And that's important because you're then going to speak to those things in all the content you create. Probably your product will be obviously directly applying to those things. So that's understanding the problem. But on the flip side, you have to make sure there is market for it too. Like sometimes you have a problem, but there just isn't a large enough audience online looking to solve the problem through digital formats. Silly example, but if this is a very gruesome example, if you have a brain tumor, you're probably not going to try and solve it with Google search results. You might do a little bit of Google searching, but you're going to go to the brain surgeon to get the real solid advice. So probably not I think if you scale it back, hey, chronic headaches, that is something that probably a lot of people do search for. And if you had something you felt was a benefit, it could be a combination of neck exercises, maybe some kind of minerals and vitamins or changes to diet. All those things that might have worked for you. You don't have to be a doctor. Obviously, go out there and say you're not a doctor, but here's the things that I've done that help. No guarantees. For those people who are searching for help and they do benefit from that, they might be interested in more from you, over time as well. So, but in my case, I've always looked for areas that are like a Venn diagram, as they say, when the circles combine, where I feel like there's a topic I am excited to share stories about, going back to what we said before. And there's an audience that are interested in that information. And it's not just an interested audience, it's a money spending audience. They actually already spend money on this. I'm not guessing. I see them. So for example, when I was refining my topic for my blog, I was like, well, I'm talking about entrepreneurship. Do I want to teach how to do business? And I was like, I could, but I'm actually enjoying the act of blogging and email marketing and funnels and content creation as a form of automation to sort of build a machine that runs behind your blog. So I knew people, especially because right then blogging was the dominant format and everyone was talking about it. Okay, I'll teach how to make money blogging using the structure. I called it the blog sales funnel. So using a combination of automated emails and a blog to make a business. And I knew that was how to make money. So that's, a topic everyone cares about. And I have a specialty in that. I'd done it, I'd experienced it, and I was still loving talking about it during those years that I created all of that content. Fast forward to today, if I was getting started, I might become a brilliant TikToker, as we were talking about, and then define the speciality around TikTok, like a certain type of video, maybe some kind of business that runs behind it, how to monetize a TikTok influencer business and teach that, because that's what everyone might want to know about, today.
All right. And then I checked out when you were on the Lifestyle Business podcast and you spoke about your blog blueprints. What steps do you go through to kind of build out that blog blueprint? And then is there one that you could, for instance, create for like a TikTok blueprint, like how to make money there?
You mean as if someone else wanted to create their own blueprint okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan of the free report as a way to grow your email list. So you write a free report, you give it away for free, and people join your list and your email list to get it. With one caveat, people don't read much nowadays. Like attention spans for long form written content. There are people that do, and those people that will read your long form content will fully engage and really connect with you. But chances are there's more people who will be watching short form videos, and that's far less attention required. I don't think that's necessarily always a good thing, because they're more channel surfing, flick, flick, swipe, swipe, swipe. So they're not necessarily engaging and building the relationship. But influencers are influencers. They do, over time, by repeatedly showing video content, build that connection, that trust. So all of that to say, I still think writing a free report is good, but if that's a bit daunting, I would consider a video, or people love handouts rather than as my blueprint, as you call it, it's the Blog Profits Blueprint. It was originally 50 pages, it grew to 80 pages. It's a book, so I could probably charge money for it and sell it on Amazon, but I wanted to give it away for free to really give people a massive starting point, whether they bought from me or not, and just to build that trust. And it was so helpful, especially when I first released it, like 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That was responsible for almost my entire email list growth. Wow. Like my entire business came from releasing that. So it was a huge change. If I did it today, I don't think it would make a splash, because, older format, more saturated. Everyone has content on how to make money blogging. Who do you listen to? Who do you trust? So handouts are more effective. So rather than a blueprint, I would do a handout, which would be much shorter and very to the point about one very specific thing. So my blueprint was about everything to do with making money blogging. Now I'd probably narrow into something more like, how to identify a money making topic in today's crowded internet, and just give them 5 pages of resources that I would come up with for the research they could do around that. And then, of course, you could apply that to any platform. Yes. So you could do like a handout that was like the top 10 ways to make money with your TikTok channel or something like that would be good in the money making space. Obviously, you can take that anywhere. I would say I'm really into cryptocurrency and DeFi at the moment, just researching that, learning about these new platforms that are sort of being born now. If I was in that space and I wanted to be an education marketer, I would potentially write, a handout again, or maybe a short video that was the top 10 cryptocurrencies I'm watching and why, or DeFi platforms, the DAOs that I'm watching and why. Obviously, you could expand on that as the technology changes, but that would obviously be hot because it's such a hot topic right now as well.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Okay. And let's talk about your company Inbox Done. So what got you interested in that space in the first place?
Well, having too much email was obviously something that pretty much everyone knows about, but it's in particular, I can tell by your tone there that you're probably living with it. And it's particularly bad for founders, CEOs, executives, people who are kind of in leadership roles. I mean, it's bad for everyone, but if you're in a leadership role and you are doing everything that's in your inbox and not doing the leading and the creative work and the vision work, then everything else is falling apart. So I went through handing over my inbox to an assistant all the way back in the early 2000s with that first essay editing company I had. And it was a life changer. So it took me a month to train my assistant to do my email. When I say do it, I trained her in everything. So not just filing away and putting in folders for me, it was actually opening emails, understanding the questions, knowing how to answer them, understanding the context of what the email would be about. So she had to kind of study me as well, and my role and my previous communication style and how my business worked. And that did take a good month. But once it was done, she could step in there and literally answer 99% of my messages, almost run the business in some ways, because she was working with my contractors, working with my customers, customer support, and then leaving everything else for me. So I only did like these really high level kind of emails. Fast forward to about 5 years ago, I was in Vancouver in a networking event, and the lady next to me, she runs a business, and she was saying how much time she spends in her inbox and how her life is driven by, a to-do list that is basically the inbox. And she wakes up in the morning and does 2 hours before she goes to work. And then while she's at work, she will spend all day, if a notification ping comes in, there's a new email, she'll jump in there, see what it is, maybe reply. She'll go home, spend time with the family, put the kids to sleep. And then before she goes to bed, it's another 2 hours of just trying to stay on top of what came in during that day sometimes. So it's a never ending battle that you're always losing. And I said to her, listen, I do my email about once a month. I've replied to messages once a month. And she's like, how is that even possible? Because everything would fall apart if I did that. I told her, well, I've actually got 2 email assistants who are managing my inbox for my business. So I deal with a few things that get pushed into a Yaro folder that only I can deal with, but 95% they deal with on a day-to-day basis. And that kind of opened her eyes. And I realized it was 2 things. I'd already spent a decade in that coaching business, and I was looking for something new. And I always thought that this was a potential business. We could help other people with emails. So long story short, I partnered with a co-founder. Her name is Claire. She was one of those email assistants of mine at the time with that business. And we got our first test clients. It worked well for them. And then we decided to go all in, and we've been building that company ever since. So we have about 25 email assistants working with clients in all kinds of different industries, from online coaching, for sure, education businesses, but doctors, dentists, accountants, real estate agents. We have car sales owners, restaurant owners, venture capitalists, angel investors. There's all kinds of different people. Everyone has email. We all get too much of it, and we all shouldn't be doing it. So we basically just provide email assistance for everything and learn about our clients, and try and get whatever we can in terms of understanding what they do and how they do it. And then they go to work and hopefully manage email and make their life much more simple.
Okay. how long does it take to train them? Because it took you a month to train your initial assistant. So how long does it take to train these new guys?
Yeah, there's no like template where it will always be a month. Every client is different. Every person is different. Every inbox is different. Every email is different.
Yeah.
You know, an email can be like a 5-minute answer or a 10-second answer. So what we always do is gain context about the role that you're doing. So we study, you know, your business or your function in the business. We study how you write emails already. We study what emails you receive. We certainly will learn about the products and services you sell, if that's relevant, to understand the context and the big picture of what you do. Then they'll start writing draft emails, which basically means, you know, they'll have a go of replying to messages without sending them, and they'll ask you to take a look, give any feedback. Obviously, the first time you have someone else reply to your messages, it's kind of like, you know, daunting. It's someone else going into a very personal, private space for a lot of people. So we want to make that experience as kind of safe, comfortable, not the right word, as we can, so you get used to the feeling of seeing someone else answer your emails. So usually the drafts take about a week of going back and forth, giving feedback, but then eventually the drafts are okay. There's no changes needed, and then they'll start sending them. So that takes, I would say, 1 month to 2 months to really hand over almost everything you want to hand over. But we're not just an email service too. We often and almost always take over calendar scheduling, certainly following up, like nurturing potential customers over email. We do social media, direct messages and replies to comments made to whatever it is, your paid ads or your groups. Whatever a virtual executive assistant can do, we do it as well. We just start with email, and that helps us get really comfortable and really take the main block off people's plates. And then they suddenly get used to it and go, wow, I want to delegate everything. Can you do my calendar? Can you book my flights? Can you do the data entry for me? Can you manage the task management software? Can you work with the rest of my team so I can be removed from, you know, being that block? And that's, you know, that's the ideal situation. When it works well, it really works well.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's kind of like a ghostwriter, but handling all your admin, and the scheduling makes complete sense. If they're the ones responding to the emails to book appointments, then yeah, they should definitely be the ones booking them.
Right. Well, you work in content, so you know that, there's this research process first to figure out what to write. But once you do it over and over again, you start to understand the thing you're writing about. So you don't need to keep sort of learning about it. You get very familiar with it. Yeah.
Okay. And then let's talk a little bit about your angel investments. So what are they? And then what kind of businesses draw your attention for those?
So this is something new for me. I haven't been an angel investor for too long. I did do one very early in my life, back in Australia when I lived there, but that was purely because I knew the founder of a car blog. It was a friend of mine, and I was just speaking to him, you know, every few months, and I would get an update. It feels like insider trading. It's really weird because they're private companies, so it's not insider trading. If they were public companies, it would probably be considered insider trading because you know about their growth, you know about their initiatives to change things and what's working. So I took me a while. I didn't have necessarily the capital available, but once I had enough that I felt comfortable putting in an investment, I did into his company. And 10 years later, I had an exit and I tripled my money, and it was a good story. Wasn't like retirement money. I probably could have invested that money in the stock market over 10 years and done similar, but it was a good early experience. To today, a little different. So about 4 years ago, about 4 years ago, I read a book by Jason Calacanis, who's a very well-known angel investor. They call him like a super angel. He was very early into companies like Uber and Calm and Wealthfront and Robinhood. So a lot of home runs, a lot of good success stories. And he decided that he wants to be one of the all-time greatest angel investors. And as part of that, he actually runs a syndicate, and he wrote a book. So the book, I don't need to explain. It's about angel investing. It's called Angel. The syndicate's a little different. It's basically like an investor club where other people can go in on the same investments he does. And it's maybe like 50 to 100 people will all put in $5,000 to $10,000 each, kind of like crowdfunding is, and then we'll all own a small chunk of that company. So I was intrigued by that idea too. I'd never done a syndicate. I had dabbled a little bit with AngelList, for those people who've ever looked into angel investing. AngelList is a kind of a large platform where anyone who's an angel investor can syndicate their deals, and you can also find jobs there if you want to work for startups. It's kind of like a tech news site too, almost like a social media news site for people interested in startups and angel investing. So I did a little bit of experimentation there, but never really went all in. So when I discovered Jason, I was like, you know what, I have more capital, and we're talking much later in my career. So I'm like, okay, I can throw in kind of the rule of thumb is, depending on your age, 5% of your net worth, 10% of your net worth. If you're younger and you've got a good runway and you don't mind potentially losing money, maybe even 20% of your net worth. If you're old, maybe only 1% of your net worth. It's all depends on your situation. But I was like, okay, I can definitely do some investing here. So I signed up to a syndicate, and I started seeing emails coming through with basically deal memos, and you learn a lot. Like even before I invested in a company, it was so interesting because you just hear, all right, here's a company that's doing something with social media influencers. Here's another company that's doing something with analyzing the amount of people that can fit in an office space, very different. So I was like, okay, this is cool. I started small, like my first angel investment through that syndicate was $8,000, I think. And it was in a company called Lead IQ, which is basically just lead management software. They help companies find customers online and learn about them and approach them. And they've done well. And then since then, it's really bizarre. Like I have had a thesis with what I've invested in, but to be honest, as I've learned, you really have no idea which company's going to take off and which is. It's about the founder, it's about the market they're in, it's all kinds of variables around that. One of the more successful ones is called Steezy. It's basically like Netflix for dance classes. So you want to learn how to dance, you go to Steezy.co. You get the app, and you can learn anything from hip hop to ballet, ballroom, everything that and it's a great app. You can look at it from the front of the class, behind the class. So put a little bit of money in that. But honestly, when I put money into that, I was like, I have no idea. Like I don't know about this market at all, but I'm curious. It sounds like these guys are good founders. They're both, they were professional hip hop dancers, and they know technology. So those ones have been good. Then there's things that you kind of think about, and you just see how their traction is going, and they're doing really well. So one is called NutriSense, which is a glucose monitor, where you have like one of those things on your arm, and it's just monitoring your sugar, how your body responds to food, and then you get some dietitian advice to go with it. So it's about health. There's another one, I can't remember the name, but it's basically like Airbnb, but it's for getting buildings for filming. So if you're making a movie in Hollywood and you need to rent a mansion, you can go on the site to do that. Or if you're an influencer and you just want a cool background for shooting your stories, you can rent, a space for a day or an afternoon or something like that. And they're doing, very well as well. So I don't have, like I said, my philosophy has gone from I'll try and pick industries that I know about and the people look good and the numbers look good, to instead I'm going to try and spread a little bit wider net. So I reduced how much money I put in up front, and it could be as little as like $2,000 to $4,000, and then you put more in when they start to show results. And I like that, because I never thought you could become an angel investor with, say, $2,000. I thought you had to have 50,000, 100,000 just to do one investment. So I love that, and it becomes more accessible. And since then, outside of that syndicate, I've actually there's some other people. There's Arlen Hamilton. She does like underrepresented founders. So I've done a few of her deals as part of her syndicate. And I hope, won't be yet, but maybe in the next sort of 5 to 10 years, I'd actually like to take more time and pick companies to invest in myself, not just through syndicates as well. So if, opportunities come up, maybe here in Canada or just through travels, it would be nice to kind of have found the company yourself and, being there right from the start and watch it go to something big. So that's something I'd like to do as well.
Okay, fantastic. And then what does your future look like? So do you have a medium term or a long term goal that you're looking forward to besides the angel investing syndication?
I don't make 5-10 year plans. I do like to focus on ideas, and I think that's what always gets me excited about the future. So I like it when your business is obviously doing really well. Like I focus on Inbox Done right now because it has grown. There were some up and downs early on, but as we've seen more of the right type of client become a customer and seeing them benefit, you kind of go, wow, this is something that lots of people could benefit. So I committed myself to like, let's really, get this out to as many people as we can. And my blogging business, I mean, I still have it, but I did it for like 15 years. I think we're at my 16th year as we're recording this of actually having a blog. And I still love writing and podcasting and sharing content, but I'm not going to, for example, sit down and create another 20-hour course like I did with my Black Mastermind course, or I'm not going out there and still pushing the how to make money blogging mantra. It's not that I don't think you can. It's after 15 years, I want to start talking about something else on podcasts and, teaching some other topics. So I've kind of moved a little bit away from that. And yeah, my future outside of that, I am very excited about angel investing. Do have a little idea for an ed tech app, basically, that I want to build on the side. Actually, you're talking to me right now as I'm starting to look for developers, and just want to maybe launch that next year. Funnily enough, it does tie into my coaching business. It would be for that market. So I haven't left it. I'd just rather do it with new technologies and new ideas. The only other thing really in the future, I don't know when, but I am really compelled by the DeFi world, and not just DeFi, but blockchain as it applies to everything, whether it's education, whether it's finance, whether it's just how we live our lives. It could be travel, it could be healthcare. So it's just Web 3.0 as they call it. So it is, as I said earlier, it's nice to be riding a wave while it's building, because that is exciting. It makes it easier because everyone wants to talk to you because you're doing something in the latest new space. So if you're doing AI now or crypto now, you don't have to market hard. You just put your hand up and say, hey, I'm doing something in crypto. Interviews, press coverage, it's become so much easier. So I'm sure something, whether it could be an angel investment or whether it's something I do myself, I don't know. And besides that, I still want to travel. That's the other thing. I'd never want to stop. The world's very big. That we were speaking off air where your family's from all over the place. So, there's always new things to see. And I don't think we get enough years in our life to see everything on this planet alone.
There's been a bit of a pause lately, so definitely get back to that.
Yeah, so hopefully there's more travels in the future as well.
Okay, awesome. And then in closing, just a few short questions. So firstly, what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self looking back? Because that's pretty much when you started, but is there anything, having gone through the whole journey now, that you would say to yourself?
I'm always wary with this question because, yes, for sure, I would do things differently and be more confident and double down on ideas rather than go all over the place. But I also know that my 18-year-old self would have trouble doing that because you haven't lived through the experiences to have the confidence to follow through. So it's almost like you have to be all over the place to discover why that doesn't work and feel all the negative emotions, recover, build strength and character, and then you do all the follow through and then have more confidence. So if I could impart that instantaneously to my 18-year-old self, that would be awesome, without having to go through anything. But I don't think, other than just saying maybe experiment more and do things that are uncomfortable more often than I did, because I felt like I guess everyone feels like this, but I felt like I was very slow at achieving the things and having experiences that I wanted to, more often than not because of just fear of putting myself into uncomfortable situations and experiences and just self-doubt. So yeah, if I would change my my mindset around that and see it more as an experiment and no such thing as failure. You're uncomfortable for a moment, but then it's over and you forget about it. So all those things would have definitely helped to speed up everything that I was, eventually striving for.
Yeah, definitely. And then is there one book or podcast or resource that you can recommend to our listeners that would help them in their journey, especially at the start?
Let me be selfish and recommend my podcast first. So
there you go. Especially for blogging, yeah.
Yeah, well, actually, my podcast is kind of more turned into a general entrepreneurship and find actually everything we talked about, angel investing, cryptocurrency, as well as startup founders and so on. So yeah, it's called Vested Capital. If you just go to my blog, yaro.blog, you can find the podcast link. That would love to get as many subscribers. Hope you enjoy the content. Outside of that, for the content marketing world, especially, system customers, clients, people who are really building funnels and membership sites and information products and websites and blogging and all that, it's important to study the fundamentals of copywriting and direct response marketing. So I would suggest anything by like, Jay Abraham. That's a bit early day stuff. I learned a lot from Evan Pagan and Rich Sheffrin. They both have books. Jeff Walker in his launch book as well. They're all great teachers of that information marketing space. So yeah, Evan Pagan in particular was a big influence on me. So I would definitely look at his work. Maybe not so much his books, but his training. And then I think it's important just to keep picking up entrepreneurship books. I love reading bios. So you can read a bio of obviously Richard Branson has two. I think that was fantastic reads. Or pick a bio of a company that you're really interested in. Like, that's the great thing about this. If you want to learn about Amazon, there's a couple of big deep dives into Amazon. If you're more interested in something that might be like, I can't see it back there, but there's a book on Spotify, and I really enjoyed it. It was like about the foundation of like the audio app, and they had to fight against the music industry, and it was by a journalist that covers Spotify in their home country. I think it's Finland. And yeah, that was so inspiring, just as anyone who wants to create like a SaaS business or break into a very old industry and try and disrupt it with a new format of consuming some kind of content. So I think that's great. Really practical, very current, another entrepreneur, big success story. You learn a lot from those kind of books.
Okay, awesome. And then a slightly silly question: where is the first place you're going to travel to as soon as you can? What's next on the list?
Something more exciting than somewhere else in Canada, but I'll probably right now I'm going to end up visiting Vancouver. I'm in Montreal or Toronto, which is places I go to all the time. So it's not that exciting, but I'm waiting for, first of all, America. I traveled actually to Miami and Austin for the first time a few weeks ago. That was fun. So, but I really would like, I haven't done much in Europe. So I'm going to say this is not necessarily the first place I'm going to go to, but it'll be the first time I feel like I'm properly traveling again. I'd love to go to Switzerland. I always want to go to Switzerland. I love the idea of the mountains and the lakes and the forests and that.
And the chocolate.
And the chocolate. Yes, exactly. So all those things in one place. And it's always just looked absolutely stunning. Not that, Canada has a lot of that too, but there's always been something special about those pictures and the stuff I see on Instagram about Switzerland. So that's probably the next big trip.
Okay, fantastic. And then finally, where can our listeners find you? So if you just say all of your social media tags and your website, I'll pop them in the tags.
Okay, so inboxdone.com for email management. So if you need an executive assistant or drowning in email, inboxdone.com. My blog and everything you talked about with the blueprint and all my training content, videos, everything there is at yaro.blog. The podcast, Vested Capital, is there too. And really for my social, it's easy. It's just my full name, Yaro Starak. So you put twitter.com, Yaro Starak. You put facebook.com, Yaro Starak. You put Instagram, Yaro Starak. The only one that's confusing is good old LinkedIn, because they put that IN in the middle of it. So it's IN/Yaro Starak, and away you go.
Okay, awesome. Perfect. So Yaro, thank you so much for joining me, giving us your time, and thank you to our listeners and watchers today. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to this on a podcasting app, subscribe to the Systeme podcast so that you never miss an episode. Systeme.io is a digital marketing software platform packed with all the tools you need to grow your online business.